Today, we're going to tell you about a 5-year-old boy who went from ruling a vast empire to moving all the way to Britain and becoming known as the Black Prince of Perthshire. He was dethroned, exiled, and befriended by Queen Victoria. He was the first Indian prince to be acknowledged by the English government. And later he found out all the manipulation that he has lived through and rebelled, but more on that at the end. Hi, I'm Misha.
And I'm Arij, and welcome to Tarihi Tales. And in this video, we're going to be talking about none other than the last Maharaja of Punjab, the son of Ranjit Singh, Duleep Singh. So our story begins from the September of 1843, when, after a series of weird murders and intricate plots in the court in Punjab, all that's left of Ranjit Singh's successors are the 5-year-old boy, Duleep Singh. But since he was a 5-year-old boy, the only person who was actually in charge was his mother, Maharani Jind Kaur. She herself had a very interesting life, going from the daughter of a dog keeper to that of a queen, but that's another story. Going back to Duleep Singh, we'll fast forward a bit and come to 1849, the year the Sikhs were finally defeated in the Anglo-Sikh War by the British. 2 wars occurred and there were multiple traitors in the Sikh army, and there were a lot of fine details that led to their loss. And if you want to know more details about those battles themselves, then we have videos on those and you can go see them. But coming back to the Maharaja, a ruler after the war has already been lost, what happens to him? Well, he gets a pension, and the pension is as stated: no less than 4 lakhs and not exceeding 5 lakhs of the company's rupee. But we've got to note that this probably came from his own treasury, as his treasury was now part of the company's money or the company's asset. So, in a roundabout way, they were paying him from his own money.
So after these battles, the British actually decided that they want to hold a grand ceremony in which they're going to award one of the biggest traitors, Tej Singh. He was responsible for a lot of deaths and a lot of casualties on the Sikh side, and obviously a big part of why the British won. So the British wanted to make him the Raja of Sialkot. And like everything that the British did, they wanted to make it look legitimate. And in order to do that, they asked the Maharajah Duleep Singh to place the red mark on his forehead. But on the day of the ceremony, while the event was going on, the Maharaja actually refused to do that. And the British were infuriated and humiliated. And a little while later, they found out that this only happened because the Maharaja was listening to his mother's orders. His mother, Maharani Jind Kaur, who was previously in charge, basically told the Maharaja to not go through with this and to not give his seal of approval to the guy who cost them the kingdom, And this was a huge issue in the eyes of the British. They realized at this moment that the Maharani and her son, Maharaja Duleep Singh, need to be separated. And that's exactly what they did. There are some quotes that say that it took the Maharani out of the palace screaming by her hair. That's probably just a phrase that they used, but it was a brutal separation. And for a little while, they held the Maharaja in the Lahore fort, and the Maharani was taken down to Sheikhupura and imprisoned in the castle over there. Maharaja Duleep Singh was only 10 at the time all of this happened. So just a little boy. And now, since he's so young, he can't be left alone. The British decide that he needs a caretaker. And who better than a British official to be the new caretaker of an ex-Maharaja? So they picked Dr. John Logan and his wife, Lady Lena, basically. They both kind of bring up the boy from here on onwards. Dr. Logan was actually paid for through the Maharaja's own pension. He was given £1,000 per annum. Shortly after this, the Maharaja was actually moved. The British wanted to take him out of Punjab in case that, another rebellion is sparked. So they took him out of Punjab and they moved him to the British-controlled area of Fatehgarh. In Fatehgarh, the Maharaja was actually carefully molded away from the life that he was used to and also from the people that he was used to. So there are writings of Dr. John Logan that have survived which mention that when they were moving the Maharaja from Lahore to Fatehgarh, he says that no Sikh servants or Hindu priests would actually go with him, and he left without a copy of the Granth, the book of Sikhism, right? And in his writings, he also says that only a few Muslim servants decided to come with him, and nobody else was willing to come with the Maharaja, even though they were promised accommodations and food and everything, but nobody came. And he's also mentioning at the same time that, see, now the British cannot be held responsible for not teaching him Sikhism because it's not really our thing. We can't teach him Sikhism. His people should have come with him. Now, on the one side, he's saying this, but on the other side, we see that the few people who did come with the Maharaja, shortly after moving to Fatehgarh, those people are being sent back now. Even the Maharaja's lifelong personal assistant, who was a Muslim, he was dismissed, and instead of him, a Hindu priest, a Hindu Brahmin priest by the name of Bhajan Lal was installed. And what's weird is that Bhajan Lal was kind of the person who started pulling the Maharaja towards Christianity. He would read him passages of the Bible every night. And there are also some British people who have remarked on how weird this is, like their writings of them, which say that how weird it is that Bhajan Lal, who's himself a Hindu priest, is reading the Bible to the Maharaja, but he's not really converting to Christianity. Later in life, Duleep Singh is actually have noted to said that he realizes now that he's older that Bhajan Lal was probably a spy installed by Dr. John Logan to keep a closer eye on the Maharaja. But he didn't know this at the time, obviously, he was just a little kid. So this, combined with multiple other factors, kind of led the Maharaja towards a change of heart. And he embraced Christianity on 8th March 1853. We have a whole entire video on how this religious change actually occurred because there's a lot more that went on, and we'll link that for you up here. Okay, so now up till this point, what has happened is that the 5-year-old boy who was once a Maharaja has now become a political hostage. He's now also 10 years old, and he's been separated from his mother, and he's also converted from Sikhism to Christianity. And at the same time, the kid is so young and he's being molded so subtly that he doesn't realize what's going on at all. He's actually having a time of his life. He's really enjoying his time in Fatehgarh. But on the outside of this Fatehgarh bubble, the whole of Punjab and Maharani Jind Kaur, they're all kind of impatient to get the Maharaja back. And obviously, they would want to try and get the kingdom back again. But the British make sure that this doesn't happen. The Maharaja is basically forbidden from seeing anybody who's influential back in Punjab. Also, the Maharani at this point has gone to Nepal, and she has been constantly trying to get in touch with her son, and she sends a number of different spies to kind of get in touch with the Maharaja. But the British are very clever about this. They capture all of them, and all of them are sent back or disposed of. The Maharaja doesn't have a hint that his mother has been trying to contact him. So, as I mentioned, the Maharaja inside the Fatehgarh bubble is really having a good time because he's being treated with like everything a little boy would love. He's been given new toys, he's been given all this attention. All he does is go riding, walking, he's enjoying good food. The British even plant some new friends into his life who are, of course, British. And their letters by the Governor General at that time, Lord Dalhousie, he mentions that, I have secured these 2 kids for constant companionship of the young Maharaja. So the kids that the Governor General added onto his life are basically called Frank and Charles Beaulieu. There's also Robbie Carshore and Thomas Scott. Thomas Scott ends up becoming the Maharaja's best friend during this time. Now, during this time and moving forward in his life, Dr. John Logan and his wife do look like they're trying to take care of the little kid. At one point, Dr. John Logan is said to have commented that, after all, I am his Maa-Baap, and he looks to me to do everything that is necessary for his happiness. And he actually said this sentence in regards to the marriage of the young Maharaja.
Now, the interesting thing about his marriage is that he's already engaged. He's been engaged for quite some time to the daughter of Chatur Singh Athriwala, who's the ex-governor of Hazara, and he's also a Sikh with huge amount of power. And so the British kind of start seeing this pattern because they don't want him to associate with anyone of Sikh and Sikh power. And they kind of realize that even while keeping the Maharaja in Fatehgarh, which is essentially like the hub of British power in India, they still can't seem to contain him from coming into contact with other people who might kind of bring him to awareness of what happened and what's actually happening. So now the British want something else. The Maharaja turned into political hostage is not good enough anymore. They need a new step, something bigger. And they kind of decide, well, why not just take the Maharaja and ship him off to England? And they do this. And they do this in such a way that the Maharaja himself doesn't realize. The Maharaja himself requests that I want to go to learn for education and kind of see the world. For these purposes, I want to go to England. But they want to send him for his life. Logan had urged him to ask this of the Governor General, and this is what Duleep Singh asks. I'm anxious to go and ready to start whenever His Lordship gives me permission. I do not want to make a show of myself, but to study and complete my education, and I wish to live in England as quietly as possible. And so on 31st January 1854, Duleep Singh was granted permission to go to England. But his excitement was dampened because his foster parent, Dr. Logan, informed him that he can't go to school at this age because he's very old. He's 15 at that time, and that he would receive a thrashing and it wouldn't be appropriate. But the real reason is something the Maharaja figures out quite later in life. And what's the reason? Racism. It is 19th century England and the Maharaja is brown. And obviously, a young kid doesn't put two and two together at that time, but that was one of his first experiences with racism. And many more to come when he reaches England, but that comes a bit later on. And so begins the Maharaja's journey to England. He goes from Fatehgarh to Calcutta, where he receives a 21-gun kind of salute, and the proper honors a Maharaja is required. But the Governor General goes this far to kind of tell Dr. Logan that when he reaches England, he'll only get courtesy and none of these honors and pomp and prestige that comes with being a person from an imperial background. He was also gifted a Bible as a parting gift from the Governor General. And so he set sails from Calcutta to England on 19th April 1854. And the Maharaja's party stops shortly in Egypt. And Egypt plays a little role later on when his marriage life comes into being, but we'll get to that later. He arrives in England in May 1854 and is received by the Queen of England in Buckingham Palace on July 1st. The Queen Victoria really likes him, and right off the bat, she kind of mentions that he is extremely handsome and speaking perfect English, having a graceful and dignified manner. She also adds, I feel so much for these poor, deposed Indian princes. Before this meeting, he was being treated as the Indian prince, but the Queen has had enough of that, and she decides that after this, he's to be treated by European royalty and kind of like an English prince. And she appoints him chief of the native princesses. She appoints him as the chief of the native princess of India, and he takes precedence right after the British royal family. And from here on out, the Maharaja's life in England begins. And a bit of sneak peek is that the Queen really likes him, the British elite are fascinated by him, but not everything is as rosy as it seems in the start. But all of that comes in a part 2 of this video that we'll kind of share with you next week. So let us know what you think of this and make sure to like and subscribe.